Looking forward to the weekend's English Premier League action. There is actually a Friday night game, and that is where we shall start. Craig Wilkie, Aston Villa take on Leeds United. It's 2nd versus 10th. Yeah, places don't actually mean anything. This one's a 3 a.m. kickoff. Now, Aston Villa are the last remaining Premier League side with a 100% record. They're good. Talk Villa up for us this season.
It's a very easy thing to do, to talk Villa up, and not being a Villa supporter. 3 a.m. is probably a little bit tough for me, I've got to be honest, for this game. But if I was a Villa fan, I would be up for it for sure. And with the run that they've been on so far to start the season, just absolutely phenomenal. And playing really good football. I think that's the thing that's excited us most. You look at some of the attacking talent that they have now. Grealish, we know what a quality player he is. And I think since he made that decision to stay and pledge his loyalty to the club, he's just really decided to be that leader. And every game he goes out and he started running games, and he started really imposing his quality on opposing players and opposing teams. And all of a sudden, you've got to start thinking about now. I think before maybe teams looked at Villa and thought, well, okay, we'll go out and play however we want to play, and that'll be enough. But now, with the sort of attacking talent that they have, you've really got to give some thought as to how you're going to manage that, how you're going to counter that. And Barkley as well, I think, is an absolutely tremendous signing. Yeah. I can remember when he first broke onto the scene, and we were talking about him in absolutely superlative terms about how far this boy might go and what sort of a career he might have. Now, of course, he hasn't lived up entirely to that hype. I think his career's dipped a little bit versus what we might have expected of him. But there's never been any doubt as to what a good footballer he is. The problem has always been consistency, maybe some question marks about his attitude. Will he do it regularly? And possibly some players, they just need the right club, the right environment. Of course, it's very early days in his Villa career, but the start he's made is absolutely fantastic. He looks as though he belongs there. He really fits in with the squad and the system that Smith wants to try and play. So yeah, if you're an Aston Villa fan, what a great time it is to get up and watch that team play. And yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about the Leeds as well, but those two teams like to go out and attack each other. So I expect goals in this one. I expect a really good game.
Yeah, Craig Wilkie may not be up for this one, but I will be for sure. Bob Holmes, Leeds United are looking to bounce back from Monday night's 1-0 home defeat to Wolves. They've been going great. The thing about Leeds, that they're really easy to preview because you kind of know how they're going to play. It's a man-marking system, generally. Now, they're going to have their hands full with Mr. Jack Grealish running around, aren't they?
They are. It'll be interesting to see how they handle him. I mean, you say it's easy to preview Leeds. I'd rather talk about Villa. I'd just like to say that the reason Villa struggled so much last season was because of the injuries.
Yeah.
They were absolutely decimated, and they only just saved their skins almost at the last game. And some of those guys have come back, notably McGinn, and what an influence he is. So you've got a decent side to begin with, and they've bought very well. And it's no surprise. Well, it is a surprise they're doing that well. But I mean, I thought they'd have a decent season. I didn't think we'd be talking about them as 100% record holders in the Premier League, the only club. That's unbelievable. But Leeds, I think we were getting a little bit carried away back. I mean, we can forget all about the old Leeds, the dirty Leeds of a generation or two ago, which I remember, of course. And this team is completely different. They're not dirty at all. They play great football under Bielsa, and they're a joy to watch. But I think that the praise that was heaped upon them was probably a little over the top, and now they're going to find their level. I think they're a mid-table side, basically, on what we've seen so far. I don't think they're going to be in Europe next season or anything like that, but they're certainly not going to go down. So that reminder that Wolves gave them was probably what they needed, actually.
Yeah.
So they don't get too carried away, or the fans don't get too carried away. And in this, I could see Villa winning this, actually, and maintaining their 100% record and giving Leeds a bit more to think about. because man for man, you look at those players. Okay, the Villa players are rather better known because most of them have been in the Premier League a bit more, so we know them well, and they're the likes of Grealish and McGinn are international players and all that, and Barkley, of course. And the Leeds guys, they're either championship players or they're foreigners from the sort of second-tier clubs. Astute signings in many cases. Rodrigo's a notable exception to that because he played in the Premier League 10 years ago for Bolton, believe it or not. But I think Villa are a better side, and I would be quite confident in predicting an Aston Villa win here.
All right. Well, Leeds United have a few injury problems going into that. Calvin Phillips looks like he's going to be out for a while as well. It's a 3 a.m. kickoff, that one. Aston Villa against Leeds United. West Ham United in 9th take on Manchester City, who are 11th in the early table. It is also the early kickoff on Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Now, last weekend, we saw the Hammers come back from 3 down to draw 3-3 at Spurs. Craig Wilkie, every Hammer, I say, is trusting in David Moyes now. And I say that tongue firmly in cheek.
No, in Moyes you must trust, Ross. Come on. The question for this game is which West Ham turns up? Is it the West Ham of the first half that we watched against Spurs, or is it the West Ham of the last 20-25 minutes that we saw in that game, who not only showed the sort of fight and heart to come back from such a deficit, but actually started playing some decent football as well, and winning some territory, getting the ball into the box, causing Spurs some problems, and they've got decent players to do that when they're in form and when they're playing with a little bit of confidence. The challenge that West Ham have had, and it seems to be for such a long time now, is just that consistency in performance. And it's not even about, can you get a run together of 5 or 6 games? Is can you get 60 minutes out of them consistently before they drop off a level? And I said it before, I thought the first half performance against Spurs was absolutely woeful. One of the worst I've seen this season from a defensive point of view. Yes, Spurs played well, but the way West Ham let them dominate that game was just terrible. And you can't expect to pick up any points in the Premier League if you're playing like that. Of course, you've got to give Moyes and you've got to give the squad credit for the way they turned that around. And no doubt they'll have taken a lot of confidence from coming back into the game in the way that they did. And then a home game against City, who we know are, of course you would expect City to start as favourites, but City are perhaps not quite the intimidating prospect that they were maybe a season or two ago. So West Ham will definitely feel as though they've got a shot in that, playing at home particularly. So let's see. But I think this time they'll have to start a lot better. If City get 3 goals up, I don't think they'll let West Ham back into the game. Okay, well, Moyes is sweating on the fitness of Mikel Antonio. He's a vital cog in that David Moyes machine. For Man City, Bob, they're going to be missing Fernandinho, but I read that apparently Kevin De Bruyne and Aymeric Laporte started training on Thursday. I don't know how close they'll be to game time, but they need some of the players back because Pep can't deal with an injury crisis as well, can he?
I don't think so. He needs another 400 million to spend.
Exactly.
No, I think it's a good sign for City that Laporte is back in training, and they'll be anxiously awaiting the Antonio news as well, because if he's fit, his physical presence, I'm looking forward to seeing this against that Man City defence, with or without Laporte, is going to be something to behold. I mean, we saw John Stones coming on as a sub in midweek. I mean, that's how thin City's squad is. I mean, I thought John Stones was not only yesterday's man, but a forgotten man. I'm surprised he's still on the books, actually. He seems to have lost his way completely. And it would be an unfair fight if it was Antonio up against John Stones. Ruben Dias, they've got him. He was supposed to be the long-awaited, tough ball-playing centre-back that they've needed for a couple of seasons. Not done anything great yet, but give him time. I mean, it's a very different league to the Portuguese league. They paid big money for him. That's a lot of money to spend on a player from the Portuguese league who's not done it anywhere else. Bruno Fernandes He was a similar fee, actually, 60 odd million. But he'd proved himself in Italy. He had tasted football outside of Portugal. So that made a bit more sense. He's also a forward, so that tends to put the price up a bit. But Diaz has it all to prove. They'll miss Fernandinho.
Yeah.
That's a serious blow to them. He won't be playing at all. I mean, they missed him last season when he was playing centre-back, a makeshift centre-back, not as effective as he was when he was in midfield. And they missed that. They're going to miss him in both places now. City are nowhere near the side that got 100 points 2 seasons ago and played mesmerizing football. I think even up front, they're not quite as slick as they were. They haven't got David Silva, and Kevin De Bruyne does seem to get injured quite often. So they're not the force they were. Although having said that, West Ham have been their bogey, well, not their bogey team, City have been West Ham's bogey team the last few years. They usually beat them about 5-0. They are absolute whipping boys for City. But with all these different players in now we're talking about, I don't think they're too concerned about history. So to me, I think West Ham's only chance is if Antonio is fit and really gives the City defence a rough time.
It's all set up.
1 point for 0-0 after all that.
it's all set. Moyes will take that as well. It's all set up for an intriguing battle then. West Ham Man City is your early kickoff on Saturday evening. Right, it's off to Old Trafford. We go for Manchester United against Chelsea. This is your late Saturday game, midnight. This one kicks off. Bob Holmes, the obvious question here is, what's Ole going to do? Back 5 or back 4?
Well, they say don't change your winning team. That's an old-fashioned phrase, isn't it, in these days of rotation? But he might be tempted to stick with that side, or certainly that back 5, because they did the job. Against just have to mention PSG. Really, they're falling apart. They've lost, apart from Carvalho, they've lost Rabiot, Choupo-Moting, and Thiago Silva. I'm not wishing to diminish United's achievement, but it was a weakened PSG. However, Chelsea, buoyed by their clean sheet, will be looking. They will be very chuffed to get another clean sheet. I tell you, Frank Lampard would be jumping up and down if this ends 0-0. But I doubt if it will somehow. With all the attacking talent on view, this could be a high-scoring game. We've had 1 or 2 in the past. We've also had a couple of 0-0 draws, I remember, in this fixture. But intriguing matchup here, because you've got United, who were being written off by their own fans a couple of weeks ago, and people calling for Pochettino. And now there's more chance of Pochettino going to Real Madrid than there is of him going to Old Trafford. I mean, Ole has done it again. Well, I'm not saying he's out of the wood completely, but he's bought himself a bit of time. And if he can keep Pogba off the field, I know he didn't quite manage it because he came on in Paris in the second half, but really they play better without him.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the keys. I mean, Pogba is totally underperforming, and it's as if he doesn't care. And I think this attitude, this lackadaisical attitude, transmits itself to other players. It has to, because he's such a big figure. I mean, he is the best player on paper, on the books, and yet he seldom performs. It's just the occasional cameo when you see the talent that he's got. And I think this has been a problem for United, and I think it's dragged them down. Instead of him being an inspiration, he's actually young players are wondering what he's doing in the side. So without him, and it's a fairly young side, without him. I mean, with the likes of, excuse me, Twanzebe. I mean, Rashford, he's only 23. He's been around forever, it seems. Martial is only 22, I think, or 23. I mean, this is a fairly young, promising Manchester United side. And with Fernandes being a key man, the fulcrum really of the team, I think they do have possibilities here, and enough to keep Ole in a job for the foreseeable future. I think he's turned it round, and like he did last time. I mean, he's not there yet. They've got to win a few more games before we start talking about United being back in Europe and again next season and all that. They're not going to challenge for the title. I don't think they're that good, but there are possibilities there. And he's done it on a limited budget. He hasn't spent wildly, and he's using his own resources. The young players are coming through. So it's all looking a lot better than it did a couple of weeks ago.
Surely XL Twanzebe has bought himself, given himself enough credit to earn a starting spot the weekend. We shall see. For Chelsea, Craig Wilkie, now big money signing Timo Werner has been used out on the left flank, but we've seen that he's a really good centre forward with his 2 goals last time out. And let's face it, Chelsea have got enough players to play out on the flanks. They've got Pulisic, they've got Ziyech, and all that. Do you reckon we're going to see Werner up front as a number 9?
I think we will. I think we should. It's interesting. We were just speculating about what sort of team that Solskjaer might send out, and it's equally unclear as to what Lampard might do tactically and with his team selection and everything like that. I mean, just to go back to Bob's point, I mean, Pogba's no McTominay, is he? So let's just be clear about that from a Scottish perspective. But, but yeah, you're right when it comes to Werner. I was really impressed with his performance last weekend. He looked like a bit of an old-fashioned number 9 in that role. The way that he was just looking to get turned and go directly at the defenders every time that Chelsea got the ball. And I think one of the interesting things for me when I look at that Chelsea side is the role of Jorginho, right? And he was a player that Sarri brought in to play in a very specific style. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't quite work. And Chelsea got a lot of stick on occasion when he was seen to be, playing sideways passes and not bringing enough momentum to the team. But on his day, I think he's an absolutely fantastic footballer. And Lampard, it seems to me, is still trying to figure out exactly how best to use him. But if you play him a little bit further up the field, if you let him try and dictate play a little bit, which is what we saw last weekend, and he was involved in almost every good thing that Chelsea did against Southampton and set up a couple of the goals. If he gets that understanding going with Werner, then I think some really interesting things might start happening for Chelsea. But you look at every area of that team. You look at the defence, you look at the midfield, you look at the forwards, as you were mentioning earlier, and I still don't know yet what Lampard's first choice 11 is. And I'm not sure if he knows himself who his ideal starting 11 is, if he's got all those players fit, and how much he might change it from game to game. So it's definitely an evolution at Chelsea. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, two sides who need a bit of momentum. They need to put a few wins together. So whoever comes out on top of this, let's see how far that might take them in the next month or so.
Sunday, midnight kickoff. Man United still yet to taste victory at Old Trafford this season. Man United, Chelsea then, Sunday, 12:30. Liverpool take on Sheffield United. It's a 3 a.m. kickoff on Sunday. Poor old Sheffield United, Bob. You're not going to fancy this. You haven't started well this season. You're going to Anfield, where Liverpool are unbeaten in 61 Premier League games at home. I know they've got some injuries, but we've seen that they can still go away. They've got strength in depth, and they've got quality players.
Yeah, and you wouldn't put a lot of money on Ryan Brewster scoring against his old club, would you? But you never know. I mean, he's gone there on a proper deal. So Liverpool can't have a clause saying he doesn't play against them. Although they do have a buyback clause, so they haven't given up on him totally. But it would be something of a fairy story for him if he were to score. I mean, he's been brought to Sheffield to do that, because that's the thing they desperately need. And I think he's a good prospect, but it's asking a lot to put the whole burden of Sheffield United's goal scoring this season on a young guy like that who's not quite proved himself yet. So Liverpool won't be quaking in their boots at the prospect, although they do know what he's like, because he has played in training. He has trained with the first team squad and got the occasional glimpse. But no, Liverpool, they've got a couple of easy looking games. I wouldn't say easy, but easy looking games on paper now to sort themselves out. That was a tough one at Ajax in midweek. They came through that unscathed and with a bonus of 3 points. Now they've got Sheffield United at home, followed by Midtjylland in midweek, next week in the Champions League. So they're the whipping boys of that group, and that looks like another fairly easy task. So they can switch the formation a little bit. They can experiment. I think they can afford to do that in these next two games. And then they'll have a better idea of how they're going to cope without Van Dijk. So don't be surprised to see an unfamiliar lineup. And it was significant that Klopp rotated as early as the 60th minute in midweek, taking off the whole front three. I mean, that's almost unprecedented. So he does seem determined to give the likes of Minamino and Shaqiri. I mean, there's another forgotten man. Shaqiri came on. So it looks like he's going to use the full strength of the squad here to cope with this injury crisis. And I think whatever he decides upon, they should have enough to cope with Sheffield United, who sadly look as if they've got a season of struggle ahead of them.
Okay.
I wouldn't say there were shoo-ins to go down, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah. Going into the break, quick one, Craig Wilkie. Liverpool winless in their last two. Are you worried?
Well, I'll probably have to get up at 3 a.m. for Liverpool for this game, so we'll do that. I'm not too worried. Actually, I think I was probably more worried ahead of the derby last weekend, but the performance that Liverpool put in that game really impressed me. I know all the controversy that came along after it, but when you look at the actual performance over 90 minutes, there was a lot to take out of that. And so I expect that it'll be okay against Sheffield United. But just to bring together 2 points that you both made earlier. One is, as you were mentioning, we're going to have Champions League fixtures almost every week over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks. And Bob, we've talking about it in terms of Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool now. If ever there was a season that those squads are going to be tested in terms of the entire squad, then this is it. And managers are going to have to deal with the potential constant disruption of if a player gets COVID, if players have to isolate, all of that sort of stuff. So there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be a lot of rotation is going to be required on the part of managers this season. So having that squad and making sure that you've got versatile players who can come in and do different jobs at different times of the season is going to be really important.
All right. It's set up not to be a 0-0. I say that, and I dangle the carrot out there.
When I get up at 3 a.m., it's bound to be a 0-0.
Liverpool versus Sheffield United, 3 a.m. kickoff. Southampton in 12th take on top of the table Everton. It's a Sunday 10 p.m. kickoff. Now, I don't know. I've been reading in the press, Bob Holmes, that apparently James Rodriguez might not be available for this one. Even in Fantasy Premier League, there's a question mark over his availability, and that's a big blow if that's the case.
Yeah, it is. But they're not a one-man team, Everton. I think they'd miss Calvert-Lewin more. But they're also missing Richarlison, of course, who's serving a ban for his tackle on Thiago last weekend. So they are going to be weakened, and Southampton have picked up from a sticky start, so they'll fancy it. But Everton, although Liverpool, I think, were the superior team on Saturday, they didn't disgrace themselves, Everton. And they'll go into it. Both sides will be reasonably confident, I think, of this. It's a good clash. It would have been the Theo Walcott derby, but he can't face his parent club, unfortunately. He's on loan from Everton at Southampton currently. They may decide to keep him. But this could go either way. I mean, it could be a 0-0. Yeah, if you're looking for a 0-0, Craig, I would say this is a candidate.
I don't know, Bob, because I don't think Ancelotti and Hassan Hartel favour defensive football that much. Looking at
I see
results.
goals in this.
Yeah, I reckon there'll be loads of goals in this. And can Everton, Craig Wilkie, can they carry on this amazing run they're on at the moment?
Remains to be seen if they can carry on the amazing run, but they're going to do a lot better than they have for a fair few seasons, that's for sure. I mean, just think back to maybe this time last year, if you're an Everton fan, and already you probably had that feeling of, here we go again, another season, underachievement. We're not even going to get back to that sort of level that Moyes had them at, whereby, you could at least be thinking about finishing in 6th place, something like that. And the standard of football wasn't that great. There seemed to be a lot of discontent around the club. Then all of a sudden, seemingly from nowhere, you bring in a figure like Ancelotti, and the whole. Actually, to be fair, remember when Duncan Ferguson had that interim spell in charge? I think he kind of lifted the whole atmosphere around Everton, and then to go and get a figure like Ancelotti, and we're now seeing the real benefit of that, because what I always said at the time was, having a figure like Ancelotti at Everton, the real benefit will come with the sort of player he's able to attract to the club, and the only reason that Rodriguez is there is because Ancelotti is there, and once you've got a player of that sort of talent and who can make those around him play better, I think we've seen that with Calvert-Lewin, we've seen that with Richarlison, we've seen that with others, then all of a sudden you start to look at that team and you think, wow, there's some real talent there, and there's a lot of points they're going to pick up. How far that takes them come the end of the season, it's a little bit early to say. And if they get some injuries, if Rodriguez were to be out for a longer period of time, for instance, then they might start to struggle a little bit. But for now, yeah, I can definitely see them carrying it on, and they're going to finish higher than they have for quite a long time, I think.
Apparently, Real Madrid bosses are questioning Zidane's decision to allow James Rodriguez to go as well.
Questioning all of Zidane's decisions, I
think. Quite a few at the moment. Yeah, lots of eyebrows raised in Madrid.
You mean they're watching Everton?
Oh, Bob, careful. Southampton Everton then is a 10 p.m. kickoff. There will be goals. There you go. That's our stamp of approval. Arsenal take on Leicester City. It's a Monday 3:15 a.m. kickoff. Both clubs were involved in the Europa League Thursday night, Friday morning. Arsenal won 3-1 away at Rapid Vienna. Leicester City were 3-0 winners over Russian side Zorya at home. Let's go to you first, Bob, and start with Arsenal. They're going good. We saw Thomas Partey make his debut, and he was quite crucial in that central midfield role.
Yeah, it's being called one of the best debuts of all time. That sounds a bit over the top, but having only seen the highlights, I can't really argue. But I thought he would be a good signing. I mean, he's got a physical presence, as well as quite a lot of skill, and after some of the jokers they've had in there, Arsenal, I think they will notice the difference. Arsenal are going along okay. I think you've got to mention Mesut Ozil because of the fuss about him this week. It doesn't.
Do you think it's out of order that he's not on the 25-man squad list?
Well, out of order, but it does seem a bit strange when you're looking at quite a few months ahead, and your highest paid player, 350 grand a week, is not even deemed to be good enough, even if they get an injury crisis or something catastrophic goes wrong, you know, and he's there and he's fit. So that's why there have been rumors about other reasons for it, you know, political comments that he's made and all that sort of thing. So it does. Arteta has said, this is my responsibility. You know, he's decided to play hardball with Ozil. And whatever you think of that, however fair or unfair you think that may be, you can't really argue with the way Arsenal are performing on the field. And he's bought a guy like Partey, who, as I said, is a powerful player. Now, you'd never say that about Ozil, would you? And I mean, Ozil was a luxury player, and on a good day, he could be brilliant, but he doesn't fit in with what Arteta is trying to create there. Arteta is building something. I mean, Arsenal were at a pretty low ebb under Unai Emery. Let's not forget that. And the likes of Ozil, I mean, if you were looking around the dressing room and you wanted somebody to really get stuck in and pull their weight, you wouldn't put Ozil at the top of the list, would you? So he's gone for stronger characters, and you can see what's happening here, and it's working. I mean, they're coming along very nicely. They're okay in Europe, and they're doing all right in the Premier League too. And I think Arteta has stamped his authority on the club, and he's handled Aubameyang pretty well. He's managed to keep him, and he's juggling the forwards. He's giving Pepe the odd game. He's not done an Ozil with Pepe, although some Arsenal fans might have been tempted to, based on last season. Lacazette is still there, still popping in the odd goal. Leno was a bit worrying. I thought he'd had a brilliant spell, and they felt so confident that they could let Martinez go to Aston Villa. But since Martinez has left, Leno has started to make mistakes again and got Arsenal fans worrying whether they let the wrong guy go. But overall, I think it's looking quite good for Arsenal. And I think I would take them to beat Leicester here.
Okay, well, Leicester are missing one Jamie Vardy. Any team missing a Jamie Vardy, well, it's got to hurt. But during the Europa League, you saw James Maddison, Harvey Barnes step up for Brendan Rodgers' side. They're going to have to at the weekend again, aren't they, Craig?
Yeah, they are. I just want to touch very briefly on the Ozil situation before we talk about Leicester. And I watched the press conference in which Arteta set out the reasoning behind the decision. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't convinced by his body language. I wasn't convinced by what he was saying. He looked to me like a man who was explaining a decision that somebody else had made and that he was trying to justify. And who knows? I mean, we can only speculate as to what might have gone on behind the scenes, but it didn't look to me as though Arteta was fully signed up necessarily and endorsing that decision to have a player of that quality, and as Bob mentioned, on the sort of wages that he's on, not being a part of your 25-man squad when, as we've just been talking about, you know, the pressures on those squads are going to be so intense and so severe this season. It's all very strange, but let's see what happens with that as things progress. But yeah, when it comes to Leicester, you're right. Vardy, such a huge player. He's been a talisman for them now over so many years, and actually has a very good record against Arsenal. So Arteta would be pretty pleased to see him not playing or on the bench. But as we were speaking about before, they're not a one-man team either at Leicester. There's plenty of talent still left in that squad. And Rodgers, I think when he first came in, he really had a transformative effect. They started last season so fantastically well, looked as though they were almost certainties to qualify for the Champions League. And then, of course, we know how that faded out towards the end of last season. And I just wonder, I've mentioned before, if there's a little bit of a hangover from that they're still dealing with. And even when they took to the field on Thursday night to play their Europa League game, I just wonder if they've been watching those Champions League fixtures the couple of nights before and thinking and wondering, that should have been us, really, given the position that they put themselves in. And now they found themselves playing on a Thursday night. And I think until the latter stages, there's certainly not quite as much glamour attached to the Europa League. And we've also seen in the past, some sides have struggled a little bit with that Thursday, Sunday or Thursday, Monday regime, that routine of playing, especially if you get far-flung away games in the Europa League on a Thursday night, then you have to travel back and try and prepare yourself for a Premier League game at the weekend. A lot of sides have suffered from that. Leicester don't have a lot of experience of trying to do that. So one test for them this season will be how they manage that.
Yep. All right. It's all set up for an intriguing late Sunday, early Monday game. Then Arsenal against Leicester is a Monday 3:15 a.m. kickoff. Burnley in 18th take on Spurs in 17th. This is a Tuesday 4 a.m. kickoff. Bob, let's take a look at Spurs. We saw them in Europa League action in midweek. We saw a debut for the young striker, the young Brazilian boy. We saw Gareth Bale make a contribution. Dare I say it, Jose Mourinho's Spurs are playing attractive football. There, I say it.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? Yeah, Jose is not finished yet. It's been a bit of a surprise. I mean, his signings have been very sensible. And you saw one of them, Højbjerg, have an outstanding game. I mean, unheralded signing. It cost about 20 or 30 million from Southampton. But Jose had seen something in him, and he's playing out of his skin for Spurs. And Vinicius, again, relatively unheralded. He's got a buyout clause of about 40 million, which is not a great deal. Jose was saying last night that he's not only a replacement for Harry Kane, but he feels he could play alongside him. And now that Kane has been playing deeper almost as a number 10, and what a number 10 he is. I mean, some of his passes are reminiscent of Kevin De Bruyne, aren't they? This Vinicius is a real asset to the team. And I think Spurs are looking definitely top 4 material the way it's going. I mean, Son, he scored 9 in 6 games.
Yeah.
And remember a couple of years ago, Son was great. He was, running everywhere, great dribbling skill and all that. But the one thing he lacked was his finishing ability. Now he's mastered that, and he's quite lethal. So they've got a pretty decent
Ever since he did military service, no, Bo?
Yeah, it does seem to have coincided. Yeah, they got the shooting boots on there, haven't they?
Discipline, always important. Discipline. All right, Craig Wilkie. I mean, Sean Dyche's Clarets haven't started well. They picked up their first point of the season with a draw last time out. You don't fancy them going into this one, but Burnley are fighters, if they're anything. I mean, they finished 10th last season. They hardly spent any money. It's a tiny squad. And is their time up, do you reckon?
That's a good question. It may be. I'll tell you how much I don't fancy their chances is I brought Kane into my fantasy team for this weekend, and I've captained him. So that's how I feel as though this game might go. But from a Burnley perspective, one of the things we have to remember is that these clubs, they don't have a divine right to be in the Premier League. They don't have a divine right to be challenging up in the mid-table or even potentially for Europe, as Burnley have done under Sean Dyche. So he's done a fantastic job in not always easy circumstances, with not very much resources to spend, with a small squad by and large. And he's had to cope with that throughout most of his time in charge, albeit I think in previous seasons, they've been quite lucky with injuries and they've managed to get through that whole scenario. So there was always going to come a period where they were going to struggle. They were going to have a little bit of a difficult time. That's come early on this season. And I heard him talking about it in the week, and he was saying, I have to look at myself as well. I have to maybe analyze how we play. Are we going to have to adjust our style a little bit? And I think that's fair enough. The manager's going to have to look at that given the results that they've had to this point. And he also made mention of the fact that we need to get back to Turf Moor as a really hostile place, as a fortress for us, where teams find it difficult to come and difficult to play. And we mentioned before about some of the challenges around that, with the fact that there's no fans in the stadium. That doesn't help.
That's massive for them.
But he will absolutely be looking at those home games and trying to make sure that his side is tight and they're difficult to beat, and it becomes that really, nobody really wants to go up there and play. And I think that was once the case, and he definitely wants to get back to that sort of scenario. Whether he can do that for the visit of Spurs early next week remains to be seen, given the form that especially the Spurs attacker in. And Bale has come in and sort of played himself slowly back into contention. He's still finding his fitness and his sharpness, but I tell you, there's going to be a game where he just explodes, and good luck to whoever's on the receiving end of that. And for Burnley's sake, I hope it's not them come Tuesday night, but it could be.
All right. Well, it's all set up for an intriguing game. It won't be a 0-0. There you go. We said it. Burnley against Spurs, Tuesday, 4 a.m. kickoff, because the clocks go back this weekend. So there you go.
Am I supposed to get up for that one as well? I don't know.
So there you go. Have a look at your weekend's fixtures. Then you've got Wolves, bottom of the table, against Crystal Palace in 14th. You've got, Fulham, bottom of the table against Palace. Wolves in 6th. Sorry, Wolves fans. Against Newcastle. Brighton against West Brom. We could see Danny Welbeck make his Brighton debut. Ooh, exciting stuff. So that's your weekend's fixtures. We'll be back next week to talk about them. For now, it's thank you from Bob Holmes, from Craig Wilson.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great weekend, all. Bye-bye.